Welcome to this week's episode of Insight. During this week's show, we're going to talk about three topics. The first one's going to be controversial remarks made by the Speaker of the Armenian Parliament, Alan Simonian, about the people of Artsakh. Then we're going to move on and update people about the new tax self-declaration system in Armenia. And we'll close with some interesting developments in the relationship between Russia and the Baku regime.
Everything will be done for you to return to Karabakh when it is safe for you. You left there because it wasn't safe. Although you could have stayed and fought until the end, but you left.
Under what conditions?
With the weapons that the Republic of Armenia had given with that political support.
Mr. Simonian, my family is in the military. Can you imagine military personnel living under the same roof with the enemy?
What was there to stay for? You had to fight.
But people were already being slaughtered. How could we fight?
You had to fight. You had to fight. You had to fight. How many families were left? You had to fight.
They were already being slaughtered.
Armenia fought. You had to fight. You had to fight.
Didn't the Artsakh people fight?
You can't make a generalization about anyone, but I'm saying you had to fight.
Well, what can we say about this? There are both practical and moral answers to the speaker's words. First thing, people did fight to the last day. In fact, they had been doing so for almost 30 years at great cost to themselves. But how are 120,000 people starved to death by an illegal blockade for 9 months with limited self-defense capacities, fight forces that outnumber them greatly, which dramatically more firepower, doing so while being totally abandoned by the Armenian state, your government specifically, Mr. Simonian, and stabbed in the back by the Russian one. A scenario that you're recommending would have led to the murder of large number of defenseless civilians. Now, are the people from Artsakh perfect? Hardly. Were their leaders perfect? Hell no. Were there things that could have been done differently? Certainly. But all of these things fail in comparison to the moral poverty of the speaker's words. For 26 years, between 1994 and 2020, it is true that we did not have peace, but we had security. And we had that security at the cost of almost every family in Artsakh, losing one or multiple family members in the multiple wars, obviously joined by many brave men and women from Armenia and some from the diaspora. Since the loss of Artsakh, we neither have peace nor security in the real Armenia that your government likes to speak of, Mr. Simonian. And in reality, without Artsakh, Armenia is a country with genocide borders. With all due respect, Mr. Speaker, on this topic, you would be a poet if you didn't speak. Now let's move on to the second topic of the week, which is the topic of the self-declaration of tax system that's been introduced in Armenia this year. Starting this year, all self-employed individuals would need to declare their income and pay taxes accordingly. Most people who are registered employees already pay these taxes. They have it deducted from their weekly or monthly wages. The ranks of the new people that are being added to the tax rolls, they range from the lowest income to highest, from taxi drivers and waiters to wealthy business people. Needless to say, this has caused an incredible uproar among these people that have pretty much never had to pay income taxes before. What can we say about this? No sane person anywhere likes to pay taxes, but taxes are actually the price we pay for civilization. What I've noticed in Armenia, there's also a direct correlation between the people who complain the most about government services and the state of the country, mostly accurately, and the people who complain that they have to self-declare and pay their taxes. It comes as a surprise to many in Armenia that in the Western countries that everybody loves to emulate, most people actually pay 30 to 50% of their income in taxes to the government. But personally, I got to tell you, what I really like about this new self-declaration is not even the income stream that's going to come into the government for people who are not on the tax payroll. It is that people who pay taxes are far more demanding of their government, as they should be. They demand excellence. This will eventually lead to a higher caliber of political representation. And all of that starts with the process of paying taxes that actually moves us from being subjects to citizens. Now we're going to move on to the third and last topic of the week, which is what appears to be some flare-ups in the relationship between the Russian state and the Baku regime. The latest developments all began when the Russian air defense systems first jammed and then shot down an Azeri airliner overflying over Chechnya, which was apparently shot down by mistake, according to the Russians, because they thought it was some kind of a Ukrainian drone. Ilham Aliyev immediately after that demanded an apology, likely partially because of the very strong public opinion that especially appeared in social media attacking the Russians and demanding answers from their government. The Russian state gave a half-hearted apology in which they apologized for shooting it down, but actually took no responsibility and essentially called it a mistaken identity, and in a way actually blamed the Ukrainians. Mr. Aliyev actually upped the ante, demanding an official third-party investigation when the Russians had offered to investigate themselves, and then to punish the people that were involved in shooting down the plane, to which the Russian state has yet to respond to. In response to their lack of response, Ilham Aliyev closed the offices of one of the primary Russian soft power organizations in Azerbaijan and actually made it the visa regime for Russians visiting Azerbaijan harder. Now, what does all of this mean? Given that the fact that we're dealing with two opaque totalitarian states, we'll probably never know all the answers. This could be not much more than a diplomatic version of cat noises at night, where you don't know if they're making love or they're actually fighting. It's also important to note that this happened over Chechnya, and it is well known that Ilham Aliyev and the leader of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, despise each other. The other thing is, if this was actually a case of simply killing Azeri civilians, this would have been dealt with a long time ago, and they would have forgotten and moved on. But the likely reason that Ilham Aliyev is so upset and the reaction that's come out of it probably has to do with the fact that at the same time that this plane was shot down, his plane was nearby, flying to Moscow for a CIS summit. It's been rumored that it was a half an hour before this plane was shot down. There's also rumors that actually his own plane was actually electronically jammed. So it's actually quite natural for the son of a KGB officer to be paranoid about the fact that that missile that shot down the civilian airliner was actually intended for him. After all, over the past few years, there have been plenty of people in Russia that have died either in plane crashes like Mr. Prigozhin, or have routinely fallen out of windows. Thank you for joining me in this week's episode of Insights.
Mommy!
Get a doctor!
A flesh wound!
A doctor! And get Vasily out!
Idiot. Can't even shoot